Yeah.
whatever.
Man, it did it again, Ken. I don't understand. It did not let me change the description again. What's the deal?
Mm, you know,
Come
I
on,
think
man.
I think Restream Restream did an update and they downgraded.
I think you're right.
The
I
word
think you're right.
update suggests that it's a betterment of the product, but sometimes an update is a downgrade.
And I'm not seeing it wasn't on Facebook yet. Are you seeing it yet on Facebook?
I'm looking right now. I don't mind.
It's not pulling up. What's the deal? Let me see. The Dillingham group it says it's streaming. Oh, there we go. Sending data now.
There we go.
Oh, unable to connect. Oh, there we go.
So
So
it
maybe
says
there's a little bit
here.
of a glitchy.
Oh, wait a minute. That's just simply saying we're having our.
There we
I see
go.
it
There
saying
we
it's
go.
got our. We good? Yep. We on.
There we go. Okay. All right. So let me switch over here. Let me switch the description real quick. So give me just a second. I'm gonna be a little bit distracted, but I'm gonna update this bad boy and then we'll get it going out. So
Okay.
I thought my background, Ken, was gonna be the full picture
Yeah.
behind me. I thought it was like
Oh, wouldn't that have been
thought
good?
it would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So
All right.
this is episode 204, right?
Can you believe that? 204. My. My.
Sorry, I gotta do something real quick.
Do it.
All right, there we go.
Do it real quick.
204. 204. Let me add this bad boy right in here. There we go. Here we go. We're gonna at some point, Ken. I don't know if our chief meteorologist is with us yet, but we're definitely gonna need a updated weather report.
Doc, can you believe this?
What in the world?
Um, it said 5 to -5 wind chill when I went to bed last night, and it just made me cold all night long. I probably was warm.
So you ready for this?
Yeah.
So we left Vero Beach yesterday morning
Yeah.
we left at about 7:45 and it was already 74 degrees and we
Mm.
landed, came here to Illinois, and we got into Illinois. It was
Ah,
17 degrees.
that's the shocker. That is
Pert
the
near,
shocker.
pert near, Ken, a
Pert
60
near.
degree weather
Oh,
switch.
that
Devil
will.
is a lie.
Oh, that'll get you. We got
Stupid.
B on YouTube
Let's go.
wanting to know,
What up?
hey, Dad, who's your daddy?
What's up, B?
Who's your daddy, B? Who your daddy be? Hey,
Dad. I hope you find your
Dad's.
dad, B.
Yeah, the evidence if
Little
either of
elf
us are your
reference.
yeah that the evidence if either of us are your dad will be if we send you money.
How about no?
B's like, hit me with a little Apple Pay. Here's my my PayPal account.
Right? For real.
If you
For
say I
real.
got to GoFundMe, Does that trigger something out into the, you know,
Well,
knockout? I, it's it
first of
is
all,
a
you need to clean out your ears because it was nobody said anything about Iowa knockout. So good try.
knock.
You gotta love when somebody comes in for a hit and
Yeah,
just totally swings and misses. You know what I'm
that's a
saying?
that's a
Knockout
total
thought he
Mike
was
Tyson.
coming
That's a
strong.
total Mike Tyson 58-year-old knockout right there.
My man thought he
Knockout,
was coming.
knockouts Mike Tyson.
Oh, he thought he was coming in with just a total slam and just whiffed. I mean, just whiffed the whole thing. That's
With
all
all
right,
of it.
man. We're glad you're here,
It's all right.
Knockout. Thanks
It's
for
all right.
chiming in.
This is what
What a
we do.
contributor.
We're like that restaurant where you go, you know that you're going, and the restaurant where they make all those statements. You know,
Yes.
they just abuse you,
Is it Ed DeBevics? Is that what it is?
bro. You got me, man.
Yeah, Ed DeBevics.
You are
50
amazing.
Chicago diner with snarky servers is the description.
Snarky
There you go.
servers.
That's what we are. That's what we are.
We're your snarky show hosts today. So,
Oh, Kim Bastarkey says we're not on Facebook yet, but I just shared it. Maybe check it again. Let me see.
yeah,
Yeah, so there we go. It's working now. At least it
yeah.
is on my end. I just pulled it up where you said we're your snarky show host. I think that should be our new tagline.
We're your snarky show hosts. Knockout said, "So what kind of church is this?" Yeah,
The
Knockout's
snarky
like,
church. No,
he's like, "This is not. There's no way that this is a church."
we just have a lot
Knockout's
of
like,
fun, Knockout. We're
yeah.
having fun, bro.
Knockout's like, "This isn't a church. That's for real. No, it won't be a church until we start quoting Jesus. Get thee behind me, Satan, and stuff like that." No, actually, if that is a legitimate question, it is.
Yeah, yeah.
This is actually, we're not representing a church. We're just representing the Mobilized Church Network.
I love it. I love it.
Christian Church, MAGA Church, Snake Church. Oh, let's go. What do you know about snake churches, Knockout? Feed us back. Tell us what you know about snake churches. That's kind of a weird deal. Like people would be like, it'd be like Snake in the Garden Church, which would be probably Anton LaVey.
Well, there's that. He goes straight to Anton LaVey. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm not familiar with mega church, but hey, mega church, mega
Mega
church
church.
we're familiar with, but I'm not familiar with mega church.
Well,
So
you know what? I didn't know if he was saying "Make America Great Again" church, or if he was saying
make the church great again. That's right, Gary.
"What about Jew?" I don't know. What about you? You tell me.
It's gonna be
Mele
oh
Kalama.
man.
Yeah. Oh, Kim.
Kalikimaka. Mele
Mele
Kalikimaka.
Kalikimaka is the word we say.
Man, today is gonna be one of those days,
Hey,
isn't it?
we're on
Today is
par.
gonna be today is gonna be one of those days. Yeah, it's a great picture. Man, what is the deal? They lean more towards Satan, he
My
says.
God. I don't want to do that, man. We're not leaning that direction. Not at all. We're leaning on Jesus, bro. We're leaning on Jesus.
Oh, yeah. I know
I'm,
what Knockout's church experience is about.
oh, yes. And they were saying MAGA. We weren't sure if they were saying mega church or MAGA church, which is an
Yeah, because we talk a lot
interesting
about
interplay.
mega church, right?
Yes, we
So
do talk about mega church, but MAGA church, like God send Trump to be the new Jesus. Yeah, that's just dumb, isn't it? Knockout. That's just dumb.
there's no new Jesus. There's only
There's no,
one
yeah.
Jesus.
Hey, spread racism.
Racism.
Why are we going to do that? Why are we going to spread
This is called
racism?
engagement harvesting. There you go. He's exactly right.
Yeah. Megachurch and MAGA church are the same type of fraud. Whoa, knockout. Man,
He's going straight for the knockout today. He came in swinging.
knockout. Knockout. You swung and missed on the Iowa statement, but you're starting to connect with some body blows now. Yeah.
Yeah, engagement harvesting. We understand. We got that.
Yeah.
So, all right, you ready to rock and roll?
So
we got some interesting. We got some interesting stuff going on, bro.
Friend is out there posting road signs.
Maybe he's taking his driver's test. He's on the wrong deal.
Here's the thing that I don't understand is friend says, is it friend I? Is that an I? Friend I?
Friendy.
And but it said spread racism, but it was a picture of the emoji with the heart eyes.
Oh, that's not what we want.
No.
Sorry, friend. No, I missed that. I missed the hard eyes on that. Let's not do that. I'm with Kim Bastarkey. Somebody gonna knock you out. Mama said knock you out.
Mama said I brought you into the world.
Talking
like the Joel guy.
Osteen. Yep, that's the dude.
Yeah.
Joel Osteen. All right. Knockout's tracking with us. He's tracking.
Yeah. He's like mega churches, MAGA churches. They're all believing in false messiahs.
Boom, shakalaka. All right.
Friend said, ban me. Ban me. Friend, we don't want to ban you. If you're a friend, why would we want to ban you? Do you want to be banned?
This is great. This is a great segue into our conversation today. So we'll get started here in just a second. But this is a great way. That's our world right there, right?
Yep. Yeah.
If we have voices that we don't like, the immediate reflex is we'll ban me or unfriend me or block me or whatever. So Tony,
hey, Bo. It's not beyond me, Bubba.
You don't want to mess with the kick of Ken Dillingham. I promise you that, bro.
T. Ricardo brings it, man. Tony Richard, T. Ricardo. That's a great. Speaking of boxing names, you're just a chill, guys. I'm for real. That's what we are.
That's what we is.
Kingdom Mind met Joel Osteen, shook his hand and everything. What was that like? Can you describe that experience in 20 words or less?
There you go.
Shaking
While we're doing that, before we go 3, 2, 1, and those that are new, the engagement harvesters, we'll go 3, 2, 1 here in just a minute. We'll record. We're doing it live, but we're recording a podcast episode. So before we're doing that, Ken, I feel like you need to give us a little Ken Bastarkey, chief meteorologist, weather report today.
Yeah, did he give us a weather report?
Oh, Kingdom Mind said he told him he was apostolic. I wonder how that went.
I'm not seeing the weather report.
Seen it?
No, but let me just tell you this. I did pull up the special weather statement. The special weather statement is avoid the subject event as per instruction. Light snow and slick conditions late this afternoon and evening. A weak system moves into the area later today, providing light snow accumulations with cold conditions in place. Snow will accumulate on roadways, especially after sunset. Accumulations of less than 1 inch. Be careful out there. It's cold.
Ken Bastarkey tells us currently 19 degrees, high of 30 degrees, feels like -1 in Northeast Ohio today.
Wow.
So there you go. There's the official Mobilized Church podcast weather report from Chief Meteorologist Ken Bastarkey. There we go. Kingdom Minded said that the Lord will forgive you. We also have a little I don't know exactly what that Asian we need translation. Is that Indian?
Is there somebody on here that's commenting
we need
native Indian in what would that be? Punjabi.
Is that right? That's Punjab is the city, right? Is that right? The language is Punjabi, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look at you.
I think Punjab are the people. I don't know.
Friend's just out there just throwing spaghetti. So we're not
friend,
I don't even
friend
know.
is
All right.
yeah. Friend,
Don't translate
I
it.
think friend is a potentially. I think friend is a maybe a bot with a circuit loose.
Yeah, I do think that there is a time, Ken. There is a
Yeah.
time when, if people are putting inappropriate stuff, you do have to hit the block button. So we'll take care of that. And I'm monitoring that today. So
Okay. All right. Once we go 3, 2, 1, we're going to do a live recording. So no shenanigans.
zero, zero shenanigans.
For real. T.
That's
Ricardo said,
exactly.
mess with the bull. Mess with the bull,
Yeah,
baby.
yeah, that's what's about to happen. All right, you ready to roll?
Let's do it.
Let's do this. Here we go. And I do apologize. So I'm doing remote today, so the sound is not going to be normal. I've got the AirPods in today, but it's going to be all right. Be all
You
right.
have a better radio voice using your AirPods than I do having the
Whatever.
professional equipment.
Whatever. All right, here we go. You ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mobilized Church Podcast. This is Chris Dillingham alongside my big brother, Ken Dillingham Jr. the third on this brisk Thursday. I started to say Tuesday. It ain't Tuesday anymore, Ken. It's Thursday. It's a brisk day. And did y'all get snow?
We did. We got about an inch. Yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Man, what in the world?
Little inch of snow. The dogs are running out right now. They're running out, doing their business, and running straight back to the door. We done.
You don't want to be outside. You do not want to be outside. So the for those that are watching, that picture behind me is reflective of where I was yesterday morning. Very similar. Actually, I think that might be
That might be the chair you were sitting in.
No, I don't think
the
it was.
director's chair.
Yeah, something like that. So it was. We had nearly a 60-degree weather drop from Vero Beach to Champaign, Urbana. Actually, I'm in Muhammad, Illinois today.
For real.
So a little bit chilly. But so I'm relegated to the basement down here. I'm hiding out in the basement as we're recording this because
Nice.
we got to get this episode in. You know what I'm saying?
Let's go. Well, I mean, for real. And Rev, we love you too, Bo.
Yeah.
Brother Colbert.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That dude right there, that dude will spread the love. And the next thing you know, we'll have like 800 people.
He does it, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He does it. We appreciate that. We've had some interesting engagement today. You know, what we found is this, YouTube, you just never know, Ken. It's kind of like, oh, bro. So before we get into our podcast, I got to tell you this. I had
You've already 3, 2, 1 it, Bo.
No, I know. No, I mean like our topic. In our topic. I mean our topic. Bro.
I just was wanting to make sure you didn't make a mistake like I made thinking we weren't live.
Yeah. I got you.
Yeah.
New fear unlocked this week. Have you ever seen sea fleas?
Doc, I've heard of these things. On the beach?
Listen, Google it, bro. It will freak you the snot out. Oh my word. So we're walking the beach and there were 2 people fishing and they had like this rake bucket looking thing. So it had like a rake, but it had a little basket on it at the end of it. And so I'm like, I wonder what they're doing. So I stopped and asked this lady, I said, hey, what are you doing here? What is that? And she opened up a bucket, and inside the bucket were these little beetle looking thingamajiggers. And she said, they're sea fleas. We're using them as bait. And I said, no, stop it. So she showed the water would come in, the tide would come in, and he would follow it back out and put that little thing down in the dirt, in the sand. And bro, it would fill his little thing with these little sea fleas.
Sick, bro.
When you're walking on the beach, you're walking on sea fleas. What?
That's sick.
No. Dude.
That's sick.
And the guy,
Pastor T. Ricardo says it's it's eggs laid by the drones in New Jersey.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Oh man. And the guy used that. He caught two is it a bullnose? Oops, sorry about that. Is it I think it's a bullnose shark. That
With
is
sea
that might be
fleas?
with sea fleas, bro.
Who would have thought that bullnose sharks like sea fleas?
Sea flea. So yeah, new fear unlocked while on vacation. It was yeah, that was a little crazy. But we're back at it today. We're
Yeah.
back at it. So
Can you? It would be like, hey, a drone that lays eggs, sea flea PO.
wow. Wow.
Hey, listen
Oh
to this.
man.
Listen to this. Speaking of bad dad jokes, we are live.
We are
Speaking of
live. Yes, we
yeah,
are.
speaking of bad dad jokes, the polar bear and the snowman were having a conversation,
Yeah.
and the polar bear passed gas and said, "Oh, do you smell that?" And the snowman said, "Well, unless it smells like carrots, probably not."
Wow. Wow. Do we need to do three, two, one again? Do we need to go back and start all over?
I don't
This one is definitely, I don't think this one is going in the Hall of Fame. This is
the
not
Hall
going
of
in the
Flame.
podcast Hall of Fame. Oh man. Man, and we wonder why our numbers are dipping a little bit in December. That might be why right there.
Yeah,
Oh my
bro. It's
goodness.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
That's awesome. All right, let's get going. What do you say?
I am ready.
I think you're ready. I think you're so ready. Oh man, we do have a good topic today.
Actually, true.
I think this is going to be a really, really interesting one, and it's something we've kind of it's we didn't talk about this specifically, but we talked about kind of around this topic. I don't know, maybe two or three episodes ago, maybe three episodes ago. But kind
Mhm.
of, I think it resonated with both of us. We want to kind of dig in just a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so our topic today, Ken, I'm gonna be the setter.
Okay.
I'm gonna be the Steve Nash. I'm gonna set you up. So um we live in a world
Yeah.
that is, you know, becoming I shouldn't say becoming, but is like it's antagonistic.
Yep.
You like
Right.
kind of like we talked about earlier, even on some of the comments and whatever, the unfriend me, ban me kind of a deal, the inability to deal with conflict and some of that kind of stuff. And I think it's created in particularly the younger generation, kind of this culture of uncertainty on how to deal with conflict, kind of an avoidance
Yep.
perspective. But it
Yep.
also then you have it's interesting because I was looking at Time Hop and some things from 10, 12 years ago about how that like a report had come out about how the younger generation was leaning more towards a trust of government
Wow.
and kind of the implications of that, what that meant. And now you look here 12 years later and there's kind of been kind of a pendulum swing the other
Hmm.
way, and
True.
now there's a massive mistrust of government and whatever. And so sometimes you have kind of these trends. So I think because of this culture of like opinions and thoughts and words or violence and whatever, you kind of have that whole deal. Then you have kind of the pendulum swing. We talked a little bit about this pendulum swing of like this alpha male, stick it up your nose, kind of a mentality and whatever. So we want to talk about today that is this, Ken,
Yeah.
is what is the difference between being a peacemaker and being passive? And I think
Hmm.
it's important that we highlight this understanding because I think this is important in our own personal discipleship. I think it's important in being able to make disciples in this world. And so I think oftentimes for believers, we have a hard time really understanding what it means to be a peacemaker. We have a hard time really grasping what peace means and what it
Yes.
really is.
That's what I was thinking. Like to even understand peace in a to really define it. What is peace?
What is peace, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So why don't you get us kicked off? Why don't you get us started? Let's start there. let's
All right.
start there and talk about like what is peace and what is the difference? Maybe share with us like just fundamentally, and then we'll dig deeper. But fundamentally, what is the difference between peace and passivity?
Well, I think this is an appropriate topic as we talking about today. Peace, because it is really that's central. That's, I mean, central to the Christmas message. It's central to, I mean, somewhere you go somewhere where there are Christian oriented Christmas decorations, and you will somewhere find an angel blowing a harp or blowing a trumpet that says peace, or a, or the words peace, joy, all those kinds of things. And those are all
Yeah,
things that were actually spoken to the shepherds by the angels that appeared to them in the field, and
yeah,
peace on earth, you know. And so,
yeah,
so I think this is a relevant topic for this time of year. It's not only relevant for this time of year, but it's relevant, as you just described, to the cultural malaise that we're in right now. And I think that understanding this idea of peace, what is peace, what is peace, and I think this is the way disciple makers or disciples think. Disciples think, and I'm gonna divide it today so that we could kind of talk about how do disciples think, and then how do we then translate that into disciple making.
yeah,
So I think the good setup for this today is for this conversation to go deep into this is the fact that, as you just mentioned, peace is something that, from the world's perspective, in a non-Christian secular perspective, peace is something that many people would say we need,
yeah,
right? My, what is my grown-up Christian or grown-up Christmas list?
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
no more, no more lives torn apart.
Sure.
Right. So the grown-up Christmas list is a nice Christmas list, and it is a Christmas list that in many ways is reflective of the kind of kingdom that Jesus came to bring. However, the idea of what constitutes peace,
Yeah,
how do I get peace? What is it? I think that's a really interesting conversation, because for a lot of people, they would say they have peace because they have a lot of money in the bank. They have peace because they haven't received any report about a bad medical condition. They've got peace because they don't have bad. There's no bad news.
yeah, yeah,
Or they have a job, or they have all of the things that help life have some sense of security and consistency. And that is, that is a there are elements of those things that do produce peace. And yet, if those things alone produce peace, then the enemy of peace is whatever makes me vulnerable. So if, for example, all right, so you do the opposite of all of those things, right? I got a lot of money in the bank. I've got peace. I don't have any money in the bank. I have no peace. I've got,
sure.
I don't have any medical condition. I've got a medical condition. The doctors can't figure it out. I don't have, I've got a good job. I just lost my job. I've on and on and on, right? I've got a lot of friends. I feel lonely. I don't have any friends. All of those kinds of things are two ends of the spectrum that people would say, well, this one here gives you peace and this one doesn't give you peace. And yet, what we're finding over and over is that at a deeper fundamental level, at a surface circumstantial level, you could say, I've got peace. But at a deeper, more fundamental level, even in those types of conditions,
Yeah,
either way, uh, people are starting to communicate in our day that the day we live in, that the world is a dangerous place. My peace could leave me at any given moment. I might,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying? And
sure,
so,
absolutely.
I think the conversation needs to be, that when the angels came and said, peace on earth, goodwill to men, that the peace that he came to bring is reflected in the prophecy of Jesus, where he says that he will be the Prince of Peace, and of the increase of his government and peace, there'll be no end. And that when
Sure.
Jesus left the disciples, he said, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and so we're understanding here that there's a contrast between what is peace in Jesus's kingdom and what is peace outside of Jesus's kingdom. I think this is a great conversation today.
Yeah, I think it is really an important deal, because so we're going to talk about, I mean, obviously our conversation typically revolves around the mission, being disciple makers, whatever, but the reality is, if we're not the possessors of peace, then we don't have the ability to be a peacemaker. And I think digging, so I think it starts with that first piece of, us possessing peace, which it goes deeper, I think, Ken. I think it goes deeper than like, just n- not going to hell, right? Feeling like, well, I'm saved, so I'm not going to hell,
Yeah.
doesn't in and of itself produce peace. I think about Moses,
Mhm.
right? Moses is coming back to deliver, the children of Israel, and the Bible said that the Lord sought to kill him.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
can you imagine like that hanging over you, like knowing that,
Yeah.
and the issue was that he wasn't living in covenant relationship with him. So as
Yep.
believers, as believers, what is the source? What is the source of our peace? Where does it come from? So all the
Mhm.
things that you just dealt with, we know
Yeah.
those things are empty. We know those things are hollow, and yet even spirit-filled people living in relationship with Jesus can
Bro,
struggle with
I,
thinking
I
that
want I want to
those
hit this right
things,
here. I want to hit this right here. This is good.
right?
Yeah.
So you can be a believer, you can go to church, you can be spirit filled, and still have your hope and trust in temporal things, because those are the things that we're so conditioned. This is why discipleship is so important, is because it's not just, discipleship is the transformation of the whole person. It's transforming from our whole lives. We've been trained, and our whole world has been shaped. Go get you a good education, go get you a good job, get you a good house, get you, the home with the white picket fence, you get the family, you get all this kind of stuff, and that's what's going to produce, that peace. And so just because you're kind of pulled out of that and you enter in covenant relationship with him, doesn't mean that those desires automatically change. This is why we have to
Mhm.
continue to be a disciple. And the reality is, we do have a lot of people that are good people, love God, they're faithful, they're serving God, but their full trust is not always in Jesus, which produces places of unsettledness. So
Mhm.
so maybe talk to us about that. And then also, Ken, the Bible says, be anxious for nothing.
Mhm.
So the question is it possible to not be anxious?
Mhm. Okay. Well, it's got to be possible to be what the Bible tells us to be from a fundamental spot, I'd say. I
Yeah,
think what you've highlighted today is if peace is based upon my circumstances, then circumstances can change, which then will rob my peace.
sure.
Which is interesting because you highlighted and said that even there are even a lot of believers who believe in Jesus that would say, man, he's my everything. He's my all in all. And yet he is the one who, because he can calm the storm, because he can make the check come in the mail,
Yeah,
um, because he, because he can heal, because God is sovereign. We say, I want to follow God because he's sovereign. And if my peace is based upon all of my life's circumstances being lined up in such a way that it gives me a sense of calm assurance, My peace is the result of the fact that everything in my life it feels right.
Yeah.
Then my prayers and my expectation are going to be that
Whoa.
God does those things for me so
Whoa.
that I can have peace. So you can't be careful for nothing if that is your perspective.
Right.
You tracking with me?
Right.
I think
Absolutely.
I think that's a huge thing. I think it's huge to look at it and say, you know, that Jesus looked at the disciples when they woke him up on the storm tossed boat and said, Master, do you not care that we're going to perish? And he goes to the bow of the ship and he calms the storm. And then he says, oh, you of little faith,
Hmm.
how long will I be with you? I mean, come on, guys. You know, basically Jesus is he rebuked the storm, then he rebuked them for thinking that their peace is tied to what the storm can do to them and not what their Christ is for them. And so I just think that I think with that perspective, we it would be hard. I do believe it would be hard to are we getting to a place, right? Are we getting to a spot where we're saying, Lord, if you'll continue to answer my prayers, if you'll continue to give me a job, if you'll continue to take care of the sickness thing, if you'll, you know, bring my kids back to the Lord, if you'll help them, you know, so on and so forth, if you'll, and we go through all that list and we'll say, God,
Yeah.
if you take care of all of those things, right? If you
Yeah.
fix all that, then I'll have peace. And then it will be evidence that you're a good God. And it was a really smart decision on my behalf to serve you.
Yeah. Man, there's good stuff there, bro. There's really good stuff. Um, my brain is going like so many different directions right now. Like
I
how,
know.
where we want to take this or
Well,
whatever.
think of it. Let's divide the conversation into disciples, disciples. How it affects us as disciples, and then how do we take that? How does that transform us, and then be able to go back out into a world that's got a misconception about peace and bring that
Yeah.
peace?
Yeah. And that's where I was gonna go. And I was even gonna share, we got some great comments, and I do want to get to some of them. I want to kind of put a mark on uh what you've dubbed T Ricardo, our good buddy
Yeah,
Tony Richard, because I
yeah,
think that's a really good one, that the peace tranquility order. I want to get back to that. Some other great comments here, but as you were talking there, Ken, I was thinking like even personally, you know, I was serving God, I was in ministry.
mhm,
I was doing the mission. I was working in the corporate world. Like I had a lot of things going on, but if I'm being like really transparent, it really wasn't until I started truly digging into my own personal discipleship of identifying like, okay, you know, I'm a very we're driven people, right? You and
yeah,
I,
right.
it's just in us genetically, the way we were raised, like all that kind of stuff is just we're driven people. And I had to dig into a place to realize that that drivenness wasn't coming from a place of wholeness. It wasn't coming from a healthy place, even though it was producing some good things and positive things. The reality was, because it wasn't coming from a place of wholeness and relationship with God, it was actually producing more anxiety, because the absence of peace, because there was that pressure of like,
Yeah,
I've got to keep doing this, I've got to do more. And a lot of my struggles were about affirmation. And
right.
the more drive, the more that you accomplish, the more it produced, but then it creates an appetite for that, right?
And a fear of losing it.
And a fear of losing it, which
Yeah,
right, greed. You become greedy with that, and it really wasn't, bro. This is why I think this is why we're so passionate about this. It wasn't really till I started drilling down in personal discipleship to say, and this is I think the conversation is great. Passivity versus peacemakers. Does that mean that God doesn't want me to be driven? Does that mean that God doesn't want me to be passionate or to accomplish things or to do things? And I had to get to the place of God dealing with me, of saying, no, but those things can't ever define you. because if they define you, then they own you, right?
That's it.
You can't,
That's
if you
right.
lose it, then you lose the definition of who you are. And so this is why it's so imperative that we first be those disciples and we deal with those places, whatever it is. For me, it was affirmation. For some people, it might be money. For some people, it might be security. Like you could go on down the list of all the things that you referenced. And those, if Jesus isn't the root and the source of that,
Mm-hmm.
you can do a lot of things that seem to be good and seem to be producing positive things in your life, but internally you're not possessing that peace.
You're saying you do it out of a not peace posture.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you do things that are good things. You can do good things, but they're generated by not peace.
Correct.
Which is interesting because
Correct.
I think it is interesting because the Bible said that we're filled with his spirit. And he said, out of your belly shall flow rivers of living water. And so
Yeah.
God doesn't fill us with the spirit from the outside in. I've got a cup right
Right.
here. I got a cup here, and they filled that cup from some external source.
Yeah.
That there was no this is a medicine ball. There was no medicine ball source put inside of this that it constantly refills and replenishes itself.
Yeah.
This was filled from the outside, and yet Jesus said that we're filled with his spirit from the inside out, which is interesting because then that means it's not a consumeristic model, which means that we're not affected most primarily by that which is beyond us or external to us, but what is external to us is affected by what is now within us. And so I think that, when we say what does peace feel like? You ask the discipleship questions. What does peace feel like? What does peace look like?
Yeah.
And then what does this teach us? I think those three questions, if you talk to somebody and you're asking like, what does peace feel like? What do you think peace feels like? That idea of, what does it look like? What does peace look like? And you'll start identifying what brings peace, that a person, if you say, what does peace feel like? If
Mm.
they relate that to an emotion,
Yeah.
emotions are responses.
Yeah.
And so, and so you can take the passivity posture all day long, but it will not stop what's inside of you, or the things that are external to you, generating responses within you. And that to me is the greatest, deepest dilemma.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're doing something or you're going into an absolute clamshell withdrawal, hiding in a cave somewhere.
Right.
It still will produce the peace, or excuse me, produce the emotion. You said, that you had a sense of wanting to accomplish for affirmation.
Yeah.
And so when you said, wanting to have an accomplishment mindset that says, when I accomplish, that proves something about me,
Yes.
which then gives me a sense of identity, which then should produce, okay, now I feel good, except for the fact that then comes the realization of, it's like this mountain. While you're climbing the mountain on this side towards success, you said, I'm on my way. You get to the top and you see that there's only down from both sides.
Yeah.
And so you say, well, if something topples me off of this, then I will descend back down into meaninglessness or nothingness. And so then what happens is fear begins to take over. Well, what if I lose this? Will that mean that I really do suck at life? Will this really actually mean that I am worthless? Does this and so what happens is it still is producing the not peace feelings,
Yeah.
even when you're in a spot that should give you a sense of peace. And so when you say, what does it feel like? What does it look like? What does it teach us? Let me just throw this out real quick, Chris, and
Do it.
this might be a good place to comment and sort of switch gears here a little bit. But I think it's interesting to note that, for 40 days, the children of Israel were set in the valley of Elah. The Philistines were on one side of the valley, and the children of Israel were on the other side of the valley. And for 40 days, Goliath would come out and he would say, "Send me a man that I might fight with him. If I defeat him, you'll be our slaves. And if he defeats me, we'll be your slaves." And he would come out and he would make this challenge 40 days in a row. There was no war. In fact, fear had made them passive.
Yeah.
They had peace in the sense that they weren't in a hand-to-hand conflict. They weren't fighting, but they did not have peace.
Sure.
They were afraid. The Bible said that they were terrorized by Goliath and they were in deep fear. David comes out to the battlefield and said, "Why is anybody going to fight the dude?" David is not saying, so watch. So David doesn't come to the battlefield as a peacekeeper. David comes to the battlefield as a peacemaker. And sometimes to be a peacemaker means to face the challenge with an assurance of who you're representing and take a faith-based action that results in the elimination of that which is terrorizing you by the power and authority of Jesus Christ.
Dude, I think that right there is the like stories tell the story, right? I think that right there is one of the most reflective examples of the way we live our lives.
Yeah.
Right? We do. Okay. Just real talk.
Yeah.
The reality is we do everything we can to remove anything that robs us of that comfort.
Bro, how many people do you hear that say, "I hate conflict"?
I hate conflict.
You hear it all the time. All the time people say, "I hate conflict."
So what does that do then? Then what you do is you do everything you can to remove anything that would produce any conflict in your life. And this is absolutely swept into the American church where we value comfort over everything else. Because man, this is, bro, there's a lot of lights going off right now, because I think I've often talked about this, but I think I've missed a little piece of it. And I think the piece that I've missed is the seeking the comfort is just the fruit. It's the fruit of not possessing the true peace of God, that thinking that those things. So in the battlefield, we're in a battle, whether we like it or not. We are in a spiritual battle. There is an adversary. There is an enemy. There are things that are challenging us. There are, people conflicts and things that you're going to face and deal with on a regular basis as a believer. And so if we do everything we can to make ourselves more comfortable and to eliminate anything that would threaten that, we sit in the valley and the enemy's challenging us, and we sit in the valley. We're not personally engaged in the battle, but bro, we're not living in freedom.
Right. Yeah.
We're not walking
you say,
in
"At least I'm not dying. At least I'm not going to die today." That's how, man, you talk about the lesser evil.
Yeah. Yeah. That's no way to live, especially as a believer of God. And ultimately that was what David's statement was. Like, what are we doing here? Who is this enemy?
Right. That he should, right. Who is this enemy that he should mock the living God?
Yeah.
See, David, that's showing that David's perspective as he came out in the battlefield was a perspective that said, Goliath isn't challenging us.
Right.
Goliath, he thinks he's challenging us. In fact, we know that David actually is thinking this because of his response to Goliath. He said, "Am I a dog that you would send out some kid to chase me away with a stick? Are you kidding me?" And David said, "Well, Bubba, listen, you come to me with a sword and a spear, but I come to you in the name of the Lord. You've been thinking all this time that you are that you're waging war against the people of God, but because of the fact that these are God's covenant people, you're not waging war against these men that are standing over here. You're mocking our God, and you're waving your flag in the face and shoving it up the nose of our God. I don't come to you representing my own strength. I'm not coming to you in a mano a mano, I'm coming to you in the name of the Lord.
Right, right. David didn't just go out looking for a fight. And I think that's the,
Right.
the polar ends of the spectrum. You can take
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
extreme.
He
David didn't
wasn't an
just go,
anti-pacifist.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think so. So tell me if this sounds right. Okay.
Right.
So
Right.
so so a peacekeeper is a person who that values that comfort, wants to avoid the conflict and confrontation so much
Yeah.
that they're willing to do whatever is necessary to not have any kind of conflict or any kind of issues or challenges, right?
Hmm.
A peacemaker is a person who possesses the peace of God,
Yep.
and as a person who possesses the peace of God themselves, is willing to confront anything that would attempt to dislodge or disrupt the peace of God that they possess.
100%. They have a peace of God because they have confidence in God. And so because of that, they understand that the battle's not theirs. That's such a good statement. I think that's a powerful statement. And I think, at the end of the day, as we discuss this and walk through it, I think that, we really do need to understand that, like, even people who take a passive perspective and say, well, I'm just going to keep the peace, right? They're not keeping the peace, because people that take a passive position will eventually get to the place where you can't you've got to do something with the inner turmoil. You've got to do something with the inner pressure. You've got to do something with the inner anger or rage or whatever. And you may say to yourself, I'm not going to come against this person because they could make me lose my job. I'm not going to come against this person because they may leave me in the relationship. Either, if you're dating, they may break up with me, or in a marriage, even worse, they may divorce me. This doesn't mean that you enter into fight mode.
Right.
It doesn't mean, and what's so funny is that when we take a position where it's fear based, which is why I think the Bible says perfect love casts out all fear. When we take a position that is fear based and we say, well, I'm afraid what they could do to me. Well, I'm afraid, like we were saying you were on the top of the mountain, and when you got to the top of the mountain, both sides were down.
Yeah. Right.
And it was like, what if I, what if they realize that I really can't do this job and they put me back down to where I came from? Or what if I can't do the job and I go tumbling down the other side of the mountain and I, lose my job? And so what happens is then you do whatever you can to not disrupt the current condition, and because of fear of what it can do to you, what they can do to you. And so what happens is that pressure builds inside. And when that pressure builds inside of a pacifist position, the result is that you will lash out, but your lashing out will be from a passive perspective, which we call passive aggressive.
Ooh. Ooh. Say that again.
I can't.
Holy moly. Holy moly. Bro,
Yeah.
because the passive aggressive thing is is
doing
a
it's doing
major.
it's doing something with the anger, the frustration, the
Yes.
whatever that you're sensing on the inside, but you're
But
so
you
fearful of what would happen if you really
Ooh,
said it. If you really just said, I'm not taking that anymore. You said that to me. You've gone over and over and over, or you've required me to do
man,
something
that's so good, bro.
that you haven't required anybody else to do. And what happens is you got people who, one form of passive aggressive is not, this is pretty crazy, but one form of passive aggressive is not that you're saying snarky, sarcastic things to people, right? The old saying, many a truth is told in jest. Oh, I'm just
Yeah,
joking. That's a form of
right.
passive aggressive. Another
Sure.
form of passive aggressive is somebody who is fearful. You ready for this? Somebody who finally makes it to the inner circle,
Yeah.
and they're so fearful that they're going to get kicked out of the inner circle that they agree to stuff that they know that they don't have the time or bandwidth to do.
Sure.
And so they go ahead and
Sure.
agree to do it, but then drag their feet the entire time and don't make they're not there, or they can't make it to this, or they can't make it to that. The idea was, I don't want to not accept the position. I don't want to turn them down because they may never ask me again. But I know
Right.
that I can't do it. That's another form of passive aggressive.
Absolutely. That's so good, man. And this is not, you made some comments that I think are important about, this is not a personality thing, because there's some people that are just wired to be more kind of in your face or whatever. And that's not what we're talking about at
Mhm.
all. And I think you can kind of swing on the pendulum, in relationship counseling. The conversation for a lot of the relationship counseling that we do focuses really on a couple of things: communication, conflict resolution. And in that, there's two components: assertiveness and avoidance,
Right.
right? And you
Yeah.
have people that avoidance, why do they avoid it? Because they hate the feeling of things not being okay, of things
Mhm.
not being perfectly just exactly right. And so what do? They avoid it, they avoid it, they avoid it, until typically what happens is an avoider of they put it off until the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back, and they blow a gasket, right? They just go
Mhm.
bananas. And then you have the person who's assertive. So polar ends of the spectrum, you have an avoider who never deals with conflict, and you have the assertive person who is just ready to stick it up your nose at every turn. And the reality is there's that healthy balance of learning. There are times
And neither of them
when
have peace, by the way.
and neither of them have peace. Right. Which is so weird, because that's what they're both trying. The assertive person thinks, I'm gonna bully you into this.
Yes. And we'll
And
have peace. We'll have peace because you will acquiesce to me.
we'll have peace whether you want it or not, right?
Which, I mean, on its face is ridiculous.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
Or the
Yeah.
avoider,
Yeah.
you never deal with it, and you think somehow that's going to be okay, and that's going to produce this peace. And so kind of finding that healthy place and the healthy balance. And so I do want to, I know we're up
Yeah.
against a little bit of time here,
Yeah.
so I do want to go into the next place, and I want to highlight some comments at the
Okay.
end, because we're
Okay.
going to get back to that. But I do want to get to this because I think this is really important. One of
Let's
the
do
main
it.
reasons we're talking about this today is because dealing with this and having
Yeah.
and possessing that peace is so critically important for us in dealing with people. Not, I'm gonna say the mission. When I say the mission, I'm talking about like all relationships with our church family, relationships with people in leadership,
That's right.
relationships, that we're building discipling relationships, or we're in X groups. You have to have the ability, Ken. I had a situation here recently with one of my X groups where there was kind of an uncomfortable thing to bring up and to talk about. I knew it was an issue. I knew it was a challenge this person was dealing with, and it was somewhat uncomfortable. If I don't possess peace, I may I may know, okay, I really need to bring this up. So what do? I bring it up. I got all this angst. I got all this anxiety built up in me because I know it's going to cause this conflict. And so it may come out overly assertive. It may come out
Right.
passive aggressive. It may come out
Right.
whatever. But if I possess this wholeness, okay, and this is not me patting myself on the back, this is me celebrating the work of discipleship and God working in me in these places, to be able to have the conversation in a healthy way that addresses the issue, addresses the thing that in a, I didn't tell them, hey, this is what you need to do. I asked the question, what about this? And they came out with some comments, and I said, well, I didn't really say that. I was asking more of this. So I was able to navigate even when they responded like, duh, attack mode, emotional. I was able to respond in a healthy way in making disciples. Why? Because
Because
that's
you
not
cared
going to
about them.
move me. I care about them. I love them. I want what's best for them.
Yeah.
And I'm in a healthy place. It's not going to change me. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Right.
Like if we're
You're
going to
you're coming
be,
from a place of peace. That's what we said. Are you coming at it from a
that's
place
it.
of peace or a place of not peace?
I'm convinced, bro. I'm thoroughly convinced you cannot be an effective disciple maker unless you possess that peace.
That's why we say to make disciples, you have to first be the disciple. You have to
100%.
experience the transformation. And what's crazy about that is that when you think about it really all kind of boils down to love the Lord with all your heart and love your neighbors yourself. If you love the Lord with all your heart, then you know the love of God. If you know the love of God, then you know who he is, which goes back to the question, what does peace feel like? What does peace look like? What does this teach us? And the Bible said, you know, peace is not the lack of fear. This is really weird.
Yeah.
Peace is not the lack of fear. It's the confidence in he who supports you, he who is on your side. We can't say that David went down into the valley of Elah to face Goliath and there was not an ounce of fear in him. From a human perspective, there had to be some level of, like, I want to say anxiousness, but there's some feeling, right? So I think if you love the Lord with all your heart
Yeah.
and love your neighbors yourself, this is the thing, you experience transformation. And that's the thing that you were talking about fruit a moment ago, and that's a great fruit
Yeah.
to root conversation. But ultimately, like what you're talking about here, what you just brought up in your conversation was, as you said, you're coming from that position of being in peace with what is the higher priority. And this is what I mean. Think about Jesus when Jesus said, really, everything boils down to loving the Lord with all your heart and love your neighbors yourself.
Sure.
I want to please God. I want to have I want to have a relationship with God where God is pleased with my life. I want to love my neighbor as I love myself. I'm gonna make a crazy statement here, and far be it from me to. I'm not being critical, but I'm just using this as an example. But far be it from me to in my position to criticize somebody like Dr. Henry Cloud. But Dr. Henry Cloud has a book called Boundaries. Here's the deal. You could say so somebody just asked a question, how do you resolve conflict peacefully?
Yeah.
And here's the deal. You could read a book on peaceful conflict resolution and you can learn a system or a style, do this, say this, whatever. You could learn a process.
Oh, so good, bro.
You could learn a do
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
One of my favorite poems, is do this and live, the law commands, but gives me neither feet nor hands. A better way grace doth bring, it bids me fly, but gives me wings. And I think that what happens is it signifies that the law was a do orientation, do these things.
Yeah.
And yet Paul says the problem with the law was it gave you all the do's, but did not give you the power to be. And I think that Dr. Henry Cloud, I've talked to people, oh, that was a great book that helped me, to create boundaries, and I don't want to bring negative energy in my life and I don't want to, whatever. And so I'm going to create these boundaries. But here's the thing. Those are still do things.
Yeah.
And there are some
Yeah.
people that are doing conflict resolution. There are some people that are doing life and they're saying, I'm creating these boundaries. And they're saying, I'm creating these boundaries so that I can have peace. And I believe that there are times that you have to do the things before you be them. I think there
Yeah.
are times that,
Sure.
and I'm not dogging the book Boundaries. Don't get me wrong. I'm just simply saying, learning how to do peaceful conflict resolution, learning how to do good boundaries. You need to do this. Isn't always, it's not always coming from the right position. The right position is if you are healthy, then you could just say to somebody, hey, listen, I don't want to talk about that stuff. Okay. The Bible said whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are just. Okay. Now look, I love you, but every time you come to me with a, have you heard about them? Have you heard about, and I want to, the Bible says to build each other up in the most holy faith. And I feel like every time we get done with a conversation, I don't feel built up. I feel, I feel worse having spoken to you.
Yeah.
And I don't like that because I like you and I love you. And so I'm gonna ask something of you. I want to ask you to think about that, and to think about the fact that when we talk, every time we talk, it's not about whatsoever things are pure and lovely. If there's a good report, if there be any virtue or praise, we're talking about stuff that's like, well, I heard, and boy, did you hear that? And that person comes out of a place of loving God and honoring his word, experiencing
Yeah,
transformation, and then speaking to that person, not passive aggressively, not beating around the bush, but just directly saying, hey, I'm going to draw a line here. And I want to know if you recognize it, and are you willing to respect that? That's 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 biblical.
absolutely, absolutely. And the approach has to be what's the word of God say? Endeavoring to keep the unity of the spirit in the bond of peace.
Yep,
It's the bond is peace.
that's right.
And I think a lot of times what happens is, again, I'm with you. I'm not dogging the book, but if if we're truly disciples and those places get transformed in us, then our view and our goal is not, I got to put up boundaries to keep toxic people out because I don't need their toxicity in my life, right? The boundary is I need to do everything I can to be the influence and be the disciple that Jesus has
Bro,
called me to be.
bro.
And I do think, bro, again, I think pendulum because we've swung, an unhealthy approach. And so what do? We swing the other side. We put up these boundaries that we think is going to produce safety. But the reality is, dude, you're always going to have people and things and situations and circumstances in life that constantly threaten and challenge that. If that's your view and perspective, you can't put up enough boundaries to keep. And again, I'm not dogging that, but what I'm saying is, like, what is the biblical approach? Our responsibility is to be biblical, and if we're healthy and whole, what we're going to do when there's conflict, say there's internal conflict, we're going to go with the effort of going and making that right, work with that brother and sister. And I honestly think that a lot of our church problems are the result of the fact of what we're talking about today, that because we have people that don't truly possess that peace,
Mhm,
that when there is that conflict, their
mhm,
first reflex is not to do the biblical thing and go to try to make it right and reconcile
mhm,
reconcile that brother, reconcile that sister.
mhm.
Their first view is, well, I
Peacekeeper.
gotta peacekeeper. Either super passivity, let's not cause any conflict or whatever, or I'm going to put up these boundaries. Nobody's going
Right,
to get to me. Leave me
right,
alone. And I'm
right.
just going to do my own thing, which is isolation. And one of the
Yeah,
greatest tricks of dysfunction is the production of isolation, because you're
yeah.
healing. Even secular therapists, whatever, will tell you that your healing comes from
That's
healthy
it. relationships,
relationships,
Yeah, yeah.
which goes to your point, love God with all your heart and love your neighbors yourself. They're inextricably linked, bro. And people
Yep.
think this is why, man, this conversation is like, it's like we probably could do a series on this
Just so
because
you
it
know, folks, just so you know, I threw this topic at him 15 minutes before we started today. So,
it goes so much deeper in all of these things that we're talking about with internal relationships and all
right.
that kind of stuff.
Which shows you why so much of it has to do with discipleship.
Absolutely.
Hey, can I share something this is really
Do it.
weird. I actually saw this in my mind's eye.
Okay.
And I think this is the thing. And I felt the Lord spoke to me and said, as humans, you are sponges.
Yeah.
The difference is you take a sponge that has already absorbed a lot of water.
Yeah.
It just doesn't have the capacity to absorb much else. It takes a lot of work for a sponge. A sponge, actually, if a sponge is absorbed by water, if it's absorbed water and you put a sponge down in the sink, it takes a lot of, you have to agitate it. You have to squish it out. Nope. I mean, like you take a sponge that's full of water and you put it even in a soapy sink, it's going to take a long time for that sponge to become soapy. You
Yeah.
gotta squeeze it out and suck the water back in, or you got to agitate it so that there's some transfer of what's in it to what's out in a reversal. And I saw this, and a dry sponge are people who are fearful. A dry sponge are people who are
Yeah.
out of relationship with others, and they're always needing something to come in and fill up the sponge. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. And sometimes it's, it's a roll of the dice. If you take that sponge and you put it in out of your belly shall flow rivers of living water. If you saturate that sponge, we talk about saturation. Disciples are saturated. Then what happens is there's less opportunity for those things to affect what's in the sponge.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I think that
So
that's the
good.
thing. Yeah, I think that's the thing where, you know, where we arrive at that place, Chris, that I just think that this spot that we arrive at is a place that says that we're dealing with it out of a posture of wholeness, not to
Yeah.
try to create wholeness for ourselves, but so that the wholeness that we've experienced becomes something that becomes the wholeness of others. It's the inside out life. It's this whole thing that we've been talking about. It's this idea that says, I I don't I don't I don't need you.
Yeah.
I want you.
Yeah.
If I need you, I'm a dry sponge.
Yeah.
If I want you, it's, hey, let's walk this journey together. And so I don't know. That's
Man, it's so good, bro. And it's so important because again, peacekeeper versus peacemaker. We live in a world where people are looking at everything external and whatever to try to bring peace into their life. You have neighbors and coworkers and whatever, and there ought to be something different about us, right? That
mhm.
that they look at like living questionable lives. There ought to be something different about us that that the peace that we possess and possesses us is different than what they have.
Amen.
So finances or health or
Yeah.
whatever, none of that changes us. And so there are people around us that have put their hope and trust in what we know. Here's the deal: we know that stuff is hollow. We know it's never going to fulfill it. It's never going to satisfy. If we're just a peacekeeper, then we'll never have those conversations with people because we're like, we'll look at somebody who's wealthy and be like, well, what do I have to offer them? They've got everything.
What?
Really? No,
I
no,
got
that like
everything.
they're missing. They may think in their own world that they have the things that are going to bring them peace, but like again, like you said, like affirmation or accomplishment or wealth, the fear of losing that becomes so overwhelming. It drives them bananas. It drives them crazy. If 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 we don't possess that peace, we'll just attempt to be peacekeepers with everybody around us and just make sure everybody likes us and everything's
Mm,
okay. But God didn't call us to be peacekeepers. He called us to be peacemakers, to go into a world that whether they know it or not, they're in turmoil.
wow.
Whether they know it or not, they're just one phone call away from their world being turned upside down. And then where are they going to turn? And God's called us to go into those worlds and to take the peace that we possess
Mhm.
and to be peacemakers in that world. And I think some of it does include too. I think it's is a willingness for us to be uncomfortable because circumstances don't define our peace, and
Hmm.
be willing to fight battles and spiritual battles because we're willing to to kind of pave the way and fight the way. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
the David thing, we're willing to go out and confront the things that challenge us because we know it's not us.
Well,
David
Jesus
knew
said, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
as you say, David knew he couldn't defeat Goliath on his
On his
own,
own. Yeah.
but he's not going out on that battlefield on his own. He's not trying to bring peace on his own. He's trying to bring the peace of God into
Mhm.
that place that can defeat any enemy.
Amen. Yeah. Isn't it interesting too that, sometimes we misread or misunderstand when the Bible said that the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. If
Yeah. Yeah.
someone is being served, they need something.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
we think of it
Right.
we think of it as a perspective of sort of lifestyle or I don't know. We think of it. I think we think of it religiously, maybe, or socially. But what about spiritually? What if you look at it and say the Son of Man came not to be served, but the Son of Man came to serve? What if you look at that and go, what does that mean? There wasn't anybody here on the planet that had anything that Jesus needed. You know,
Right.
there wasn't anybody here on the
Right.
planet that had anything that Jesus needed. Okay,
Right.
so watch this. Watch this. So I felt like the Lord spoke
Right.
this to me and said he
So
was a full
good.
sponge. He was a full sponge. He was already all the fullness of the Godhead dwelt bodily in him.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
didn't. There wasn't anything external to him that he needed. Everything he needed, everything he was internal. It was already there. And so, what about this idea that in the Old Testament, that which you come into contact with had the ability to make you unclean. That which you touched had the ability to ceremonially make you unclean. If you touched a dead thing, you became unclean. If on and on, all of these things. And so there was this avoidance, this perspective about avoidance, because the avoidance perspective was if you touch it, it can make you unclean. And yet Jesus didn't abide by that. And the Pharisees couldn't understand it. And they were like, why do your disciples eat with unwashed hands? What?
Yeah.
There's no way that he's going to go into Zacchaeus' house. Zacchaeus is a tax collector and a sinner. He's not going to go. There's no way that he could be the Messiah. And what they didn't understand was that Jesus wasn't operating out of the same economy. He wasn't operating out of this economy that if they touch me, they may make me unclean. Jesus was operating from
Ooh.
the economy of once you've been made clean, everything you touch is redeemed. So Jesus touched lepers where in the Old Testament would have made him unclean, but in the New Testament, in his economy, made the lepers clean.
Yeah. Yeah. That it didn't disrupt his peace.
It gave his peace to them.
That's the model.
That's the model, bro.
That's so good, man. So good. That's so good. Well, I want to highlight just a couple of comments real quick before we
Do
jump
it.
off of here.
Do it.
Buddy, Tony Richard, peace, tranquility of order. Peace with God leads to peace of God, which leads to peace on earth, relationship to others, which is so
T.
good.
Ricardo, way to go.
Now, just summarize the conversation there in one
Mhm.
foul swoop. I
Yep.
also wanted to highlight real quick, Gary Gauthier had a couple of comments I wanted to mention. He mentioned true peace is reflective of our abiding in Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Total surrender will produce the fruit of the spirit 100%. And then he also talked about how Paul was a driven person but found in a place of suffering. All of his
Mm-hmm.
suffering drew him to a desire to know God on a greater level. True peace will drive us closer to the source of peace even when
Mm-hmm.
times are unsettled around us. That understanding right there is so vital, bro. It's such a critical piece to that again, the if we look at those circumstances, what you just said, that touching the leper is not going to disrupt my peace because it possesses me. I may be in a very uncomfortable situation, but
Right.
all that's doing is driving me closer to Jesus. It's driving me closer to him and his kingdom and
Amen.
his purpose. So good stuff today, man. Great conversation. And we had a little deal on Twitter or X. It didn't quite populate the right way today, so we'll figure that out. So apologize for all those that normally catch us on X. And I don't know, Elon may have changed something. Who knows, right?
Who knows? Who knows?
Who knows? But we appreciate everybody being on today, Ken. Great conversation. And we're getting close to the holiday season here, Christmas season. And so we'll update everybody with schedules. We should be back next week. I think next week we're good on
Yep.
that, and then we'll figure out the schedule for Christmas here coming up. We'll communicate that on social media. So be sure, Ken, everybody needs to go turn on notifications. Check it out on Facebook, X, Instagram, or YouTube. We're available on all of those, and you can catch us live, or you can catch us on the podcast when we release it soon after the live recording. So appreciate everybody being on today. We look forward to coming back to you on Tuesday around 10 o'clock. Until then, go live mobilized.